Hi there, welcome back to our podcast, The Power of Swapping Season 2. And for today, we have a very special guest. She's been swapping for over 4 years now. I've been dying to have her in one of our segments, and finally, we have her today. So, before anything else, let me introduce Sun to you guys. So, Dr. Sun Lim is the Lee Kong Chan Professor of Communication and Technology and Vice President for Partnerships and Engagement at the Singapore Management University. A prolific scholar with over 100 academic publications, she has researched critical topics such as digital parenting, the future of work, and AI ethics. Her forthcoming book is titled Humanizing Technology Reflections on Design, Ethics, and Social Inclusion. Beyond academia, she serves on the Media Literacy Council and Singapore Environment Council and was the nominated Member of Parliament in Singapore from 2018 to 2020. She is an honoree of the inaugural 2024 Top 50 Asia Women Tech Leaders Award. Her expertise leads a valuable perspective on the intersection of technology and sustainability. So, welcome, San, to our podcast.
Thank you, Ray. Very excited to be here. I'm always happy to talk to you about fashion as well as sustainability.
Yes, I love that. So, before anything else, can you tell us more about what you're wearing and the thought process behind it?
Right. So because of today's interview, more than ever, I was very careful to pick out those pieces that I had swatched. And so I'm wearing this dress, which has a beautiful purple color when it's in the sun. This belt was also swatched from TFP. And then also this cute metal leather bracelet was also found at TFP. And I think the joy of these items is that, when I got them, I knew that they would work independently, but when you put them together, they also have a certain style. And I love the sort of smart casual look about the bracelet. And I love the red belt lending the dress a pop of color.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so looking back throughout the years, how does your relationship with fashion change, and what are the key moments that led to that shift?
Right. I think everyone, once you get into the working world, you will start to acquire pieces that you need to wear for work, for certain formal events. And particularly in Singapore, where when you go out to meet friends for meals, you tend to go to areas like malls, where you will see stores that
Yeah.
have clothes that will entice you. And so definitely you'll be drawn into it. You'll try things on, you'll buy them. But also, as I grew older and I started to take on different professional roles, I also became a mom and had to think about the practicality of my clothing. I started to acquire, I guess, over time, clothes that would serve me, multiple purposes. But I think, like many people, I definitely fell into the trap of overconsumption, just buying more than I needed. And then sometimes, even though you've got a huge wardrobe, you say, "Oh, I have nothing to wear." And also, you tend to overexploit certain pieces of clothing, and then there are some pieces of clothing that you bought thinking you would get a lot of mileage, but actually you hardly wear them because maybe the fit wasn't that good or it didn't allow you to move as freely. And so then the value you got out of those clothes was poorer. But nevertheless, you felt like, oh, they're too good to throw away. So you just keep them in the wardrobe and they just sit there and remind you of all of the bad choices that you made. So I think with the pandemic was when there was time to sort of do a little bit more stock taking. By then, my kids were also older, and it got me to think about how I could upcycle certain things. And thankfully, in Singapore, more and more upcycling options were presenting themselves. I also discovered, for example, the likes of Carousel, where my daughter, by then she was a young adult, and she was getting a lot of really cool clothing from Carousel, which was in perfectly good condition and at very reasonable prices. And these were clearly things that had a lot of wear left in them. but had clearly been fallen into disuse by their original owners. So it really gave me that realization that there are so many ways that we can consume in more sustainable fashions. And so I started to be a lot more open to that prospect.
Love that. So growing up, do you still remember like your fashion influences and how does it shape your choices when it comes to buying clothes or defining your style?
Right. No, that's a fantastic question. Guess what? Growing up, I hardly bought clothes. And that's because my mom is a very talented seamstress. And so growing up, I would always have clothes made for me by her. So every Chinese New Year, she would drag me kicking and screaming to the fabric store. And I would have actually sort of browsed through some of these fashion pattern books. There were these pattern books that she used. And I would be able to say, oh, maybe I want something like this or I want something like that. And she would take me to the store and I would pick certain fabrics to match the design. And she would say that fabric will never work for this design because that fabric is too stiff or that fabric is too soft, or if you do the bias cut, it's not going to fall right. And so because of these conversations, I got a lot of insights into how to choose clothing. So when I got older and I started to buy clothes, I was quite discerning in that sense. I could always tell when a particular garment would or would not work well for me. And the other interesting thing about growing up with clothes that are made for you, you also resent it because you think, hey, all my friends are wearing all these cool stuff that they bought from the store, but I have to wear something that's made for me by my mom. And I didn't realize until I was older what a privilege it is to have bespoke clothing made just for you. And so I think it was quite an awakening for me as I grew older to recognize that this was such a gift. And besides that, also, my mother would help to supplement the family income by inviting, or rather by tailoring for other women. And there would be all these clients who would come to the home and I would help to serve them tea and so on. And I would see people come in full of expectation about what the desired design would, how the desired design would make them look. And then when they tried on the clothes that my mom made for them and they stood in front of the mirror, I could see how they felt so uplifted by their new, refreshed appearance. And it was so thrilling for me to live vicariously through them because they suddenly felt more confidence. They felt, that they were projecting a nicer image of themselves through the clothing. And so from a very young age, I saw the power of fashion. I saw the power of clothing. And it made me quite sort of conscious about how clothing can be a very useful support for our image building.
Wow, I love that. So rich experience. And I really am interested to take your views or your thoughts,
Mm,
having that rich experience about what fashion is at an early age
mm,
versus to what the fashion is now. How
mm,
are you, I would say, balance the act of preserving that experience for yourself and
mm.
being fashion now being super accessible, affordable. You don't have to
Yes,
think
yes,
um,
yes, yes.
of so many variables that you have to consider when buying as compared to the last time, and how you're also passing it to your daughter.
Yes. So I think one of my greatest awakenings was after I had come to the fashion pulpit for the first time, and I managed to swap 4 or 5 items, I guess. And I went home and I unpacked the clothes that I had gotten from the fashion pulpit, and I was suddenly struck by the realization that I didn't remove any of the clothing from any plastic packaging. I didn't cut off any plastic tags. I didn't remove any big price tags that typically come with clothing. And I was just so struck by how much more sustainable it was just from the packaging dimension. When you go for circular fashion. Just the removal of the packaging from the equation is such a big difference. Quite apart from the fact that I would already be giving all these items that I took home a second life or a third life, right? And I think when I was growing up and my clothes were very much sort of made for me and also in limited quantities, I and then you move into this world where suddenly you're always buying something new every now and then. You become actually quite sort of lazy
Mm-hmm.
about making conscious choices, right? And then you also get swept up in that whole thing of wanting to wear something new every now and then. And so these kinds of urges, I think, are very much reflective of our current lifestyle. And my journey into swapping, into buying secondhand, into being educated by, places like Circular Fashion Hub, it's been very much resonating with my own growing up experience of being quite sort of careful and appreciative of the pieces of clothing that I had. And one other fact about my mother and how she sews is that whatever whatever fabric went into the clothes that she made for us, um, there would always be scraps.
Mm-hmm.
And she would never waste the scraps. The scraps would be sewn into handkerchiefs, they would be sewn into cleaning cloths, they would be sewn into little bags. And so that also has made me very conscious of the fact that, with every piece of creation, you do generate waste. Then how do you minimize that waste? So that sort of sensibility is something that I extend not just to fashion, but to, different areas of consumption in my life.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love hearing the stories from your mom. I think we can learn so much from her. So you've mentioned that you have come to be introduced with the fashion pulpit and
Mm,
swapping.
mm,
Can you tell us more of like your journey of finding us and sticking to
mm.
swapping and
Yeah,
what resonates
yeah.
with you that you stuck into the idea of like swapping your clothes?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think, with fashion swapping as well as upcycled fashion, like many people, I suffered from the eek factor,
Yeah.
I would have seen thrift shops in other countries that I had visited and felt a slight sense of disgust and thinking, oh no, I would never go there, right? And then, of course, when my daughter started to buy things from Carousel, I realized, oh, actually, I shouldn't be so squeamish. We should be open to the fact that upcycled clothing can be great. And I then saw on social media an old university schoolmate of mine posting her clothes that she had worn or purchased from, or swatched from the Fashion Pulpit. And I was amazed at how wonderful she looked. And then, just out of curiosity, I looked up the Fashion Pulpit and I was really intrigued by the business model, right? That you come here, you either buy like a 1 day membership or a 1 year membership, and then you can swap. And so, out of curiosity, I think one day I happened to be in the vicinity of your Marina One store,
Yeah.
and I popped in. And I was so amazed at the range of clothing that was available. I was very thrilled by the sense of fun because every rack and every item is different. And you really find some curious little gems. And you're able to try on an eclectic mix of clothing in just one place. And it's also a very efficient way of shopping because when you think about going to a regular fast fashion boutique, for example, it's actually quite boring. It's quite homogeneous in the sense that every shop would pretty much be chasing a lot of the same trends. And then when you choose a particular item, what you always do is you'll try a piece below you or a size above you, and then you spend a lot of time saying, do I look better in the M? Do I look better in the S? And then with the fashion pulpit, it either fits or it doesn't, right? And if it fits and it fits beautifully, it's such a delight because you realize, wow, not only have you found this gem, you found something that really works for you, that really works for your body. And so it's the fun of it that also adds to it. But over time, the other joy of TFP is clearly that sense of community. Because when you come here, you also meet other swappers and you realize that people have that shared sensibility that we're all part of this larger community where my wardrobe is your wardrobe, right? We're all sort of sharing the clothes and enjoying fashion without killing the earth.
Yeah, I love that. What has been your memorable moments? It could be clothes or like incidents when you were swapping or outside, even outside.
I think one memorable moment was when I came across a TFP video where you had asked a celebrity to try on different clothes at TFP. And she tried on a dress that I had given up. And that was a dress that was actually quite pricey, but somehow after I bought it and took it home, it just didn't work for me. And it just, looked awful. I never wore it. I was filled with guilt every time I looked at it. And I never knew what to do with it. And because I had paid so much, I also felt bad giving it up. And finally, when I saw her in that dress and I thought, wow, this is amazing. This item that was so weighing on me has now gone to someone who's obviously going to do it a lot more justice than I ever could. And to me, that is very, very exciting. That something that was languishing in my wardrobe, absolutely no utility for me, will now give someone so much joy.
Right. So swapping for 4 years now, what do you think has swapping changed the way you see fashion now? Or even your relationship?
Yes. So I have actually become a lot more conscious and conscientious when I go shopping, which actually has been much reduced now, because I realized that with a lot of clothing that we get, very often we are just buying it because we are bored or buying it because we felt like we needed something that was being aggressively marketed at us via social media. So now I do look at things from the perspective of how much mileage I will get out of it, and sometimes when I do still make wrong purchases, I think, well, it's okay. I can give it up to the sisterhood or the the broader community of shoppers.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't look at a piece of clothing as just my own anymore. I think
Yeah.
about how it can go to others.
Right. So, do you also see some challenges of if you see fashion as expressing yourself, and also the idea that we need to be a mindful consumer? Like, do you see a balance or do you see a conflict from those two things?
So, I mean, in many ways, and because I'm a social scientist, I think it's actually important for us as consumers to recognize that how we consume today isn't how we have always consumed and isn't how we always have to consume here on after. It's not an inevitability. So, if we think about the fast fashion industry today, just think about the origins of the fast fashion industry. It would have maybe found its seeds in the original Industrial Revolution, where mass production started to become more common, and then they started to mass produce things like uniforms. And then thereafter, the fashion industry started to grow around it. And people then started to acquire more and more of these clothing. And then along with that, you realize that the entry of, say, social media, which introduced trends like OOTD, outfit of the day, then creates pressures for people to constantly be seen to be wearing something new. And that's also fed back into the fast fashion industry, constantly selling you more and more things, and us feeling more and more compelled to buy ever more things. And I think we need to break out of that cycle and think about how we can continue to enjoy fashion, how we can continue to express ourselves through fashion, but in ways that are not so harmful and in ways that are not so wasteful or consumptive. So I think in terms of expressing myself through fashion, I've never had an issue with being able to express myself through either clothes that I bought firsthand, much less secondhand. And I think with swapping, it's actually given me the impetus to try certain designs or certain styles that I previously wouldn't have. And that's because we are creatures of habit. We always go to the same old shops that we know have clothes that fit us. But when you go and swap and you see something in your size and you think, I'll just give it a shot. And then you try on, you realize, oh, why haven't I ever worn this style before? It actually looks quite nice on me. And so I think swapping also allows you to be a lot more adventurous with your fashion style, and it therefore broadens your palette for self-expression.
Yeah, I love that. So now, when you walk in or open your wardrobe,
Hmm.
what do you see?
I see a vast universe of possibilities. From clothes that have been very comfortable, highly functional, to clothes that have allowed me to look very poised and very polished when the situation calls for it, to clothes that I always turn to when I'm in a bind as to what to wear. So I think when you've got that nice mix of clothes that are for the everyday to clothes that are for the special occasion to clothes that just really work very hard for you because they take you to many places in great comfort, then that's a really nice sort of complement of clothing ammunition, if you will, to fight whatever battles you have to and to enjoy your life.
Yeah, I love that. So now, down to my second last question.
Hmm.
So now, knowing what you know, gain that perspective about what fashion is and learn about the industry, how do you see fashion now as a function like in your daily life?
Um, I think fashion is first it's a necessity, right? We need to be clothed. But second, I think fashion is a fantastic tool to feel that sense of confidence, that sense of empowerment. And then, of course, fashion is also important for comfort. And in our day-to-day lives, we have multiple roles. I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I have to look after my parents, I have to do my job. And I want clothes that allow me to look presentable, but that also give me that freedom of movements, that give me that convenience, like pockets. So all of these factors are really important when we think about which clothes work well for us.
Hmm. Love that. The functionality of our clothes.
Mhm.
So, last question would be, what are you hopeful for in the future?
So coming back to my point earlier about how we don't have to consume fashion the way we think we always have, I'm really encouraged by innovations like the Fashion Pulpit, um, really key contributors to changing the landscape of fashion, but also really important in terms of transforming mindsets around fashion and being able to convince people previously like me who were squeamish about upcycle fashion to now being embracing of it. And so whether it's an innovation in terms of, let's say, fabrics that are a lot more durable, or whether it's innovation in business models in terms of how clothing or fashion items are sold or leased or distributed, or whether it is in terms of innovations like the circular fashion hub where you've got a whole bunch of different enterprises that have sustainability
Mm.
at their core. I think all of these innovations give me a great sense of hope that we won't always consume the way we always have, and that we can consume in ways that are a lot more beneficial to the environment as well as to our individual well-being.
Right. Oh my God. This conversation is so much wisdom that I am still processing what you have just mentioned. It's such a joy to have a conversation with you. And sadly, we have to end it. Thank you so much, Sun, for your time and sharing your
Absolutely.
stories.
Yeah. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so for those of you who have listened and watched this podcast, if you are interested to connect with Sun, where can they find you?
I'm at the Singapore Management University, and you can find me on my website, www.sansanlim.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.